Welcome back, Raising Real Estate Standards. It's been a hot minute since you and I, Brian, have gotten together. We've had a number of guests on, and time's gotten by, and we just haven't, the two of us hadn't sat down in a little bit. So there's a lot going on and a lot of moving and shaking, and a lot of changes in our world and a lot of changes in our audience's world. And we'll do a deep dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah. So before we get started, let's thank our guests that we had the last couple episodes. I met with Lori Edwards, and you met with
Jeremy Collins, and
Yeah.
then before that we met with Mary Beth Powell, and so we've had a lot of great experts, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to bring on these folks that provide a little bit of a different perspective. It's always good to shake things up, but it's always good to get back to the original. And so I'm excited for today, and we got a lot to cover.
Yep, absolutely. So what's going on in the world?
So, I mean, for those that listen, those real estate agents that are following us, you guys know across the country there's been a lot of changes, some rules and adjustments with those that are affiliated with the National Association of Realtors have kind of put how we do business on its head. Not what we do, not why we do it, but how we do it. And, we've talked a little bit about this leading up to this, and then we kind of went silent on it, and that was purposeful because we knew, and we still know, that a lot of the stuff that we're going through right now is going to shake out. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is, and it's almost like if you go back and listen to a lot of our older stuff, we've kind of gone through the progression. We've gone through, okay, so here was the lawsuit, here was what was happening in the market during that time, and the things that came out of just the thought process. Now we're actually in the middle of the changes that are actually happening, and we have agents coming to us like, Mark, what do I do?
What do I do? And the simple answer to a lot of this is, and for those that have heard me talk, there is no clear path. Right now, we are charting a path that was forced upon us based upon a settlement and a lawsuit. And they made some rule changes, but in the rule changes, what they did not do was paint a clear path of how this is going to work. So they've said what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, and then they said, y'all go out and do it. And so what's happening right now is the industry is trying to figure out how this is going to work. And I've used this analogy. It's not like a straight bowling alley with two gutters on either side, and your goal is to roll the ball right down the middle. No, what this is a staircase, and there's no guardrails, and there's no real end to the staircase, and we're just basically not a round ball, but a cube, barely able to roll, falling down the steps and figuring it out. But the good thing is I will say this, a couple weeks into this, at least a few weeks into this for us, we started this in August 1 in our market. All in all, the real estate agents as a whole are playing well together in the sandbox. Mm-hmm. They're all trying to play fair. They're all trying to work for their client's interest, all while trying to figure out what forms, what conversations need to be had with the consumers, and how they enter into contracts, how they enter into negotiations. And it's, all in all, from a 30,000 foot view, I think it is going as well as it could be.
Yeah, we've said this, you've heard us say this before, and we've said this, many times. You got to have grace during this whole period. You've got to have grace for yourself. You got to have grace for the people kind of helping you out, trying to tell you how to navigate through this. And you have to have grace with the people on the other side, because some people may do something a little bit differently than the way we're doing it. And, we got to have that piece of it. And the other thing is you got to be okay with, agent on the other side of this transaction wants this done this way. Well, that's not how we do it. Well, that you've got to back up and say, well, can we get to the end game a different way? And I believe the way they've set it up, or the way it is set up, there are many different ways to skin this cat, and we're figuring that out along the way.
Absolutely. And one of the things that and I've told our agents, not told, I hate that word, discussed with our agents, is try not to get into conversations with the starting conversation of, well, my broker in charge said this is how it's supposed to be done. This is the right way to do it, because ultimately I don't think that's not clear. That has not that there is zero clarity when it comes to the right way or the way it's supposed to be. We're all figuring out, and in our market we have a number of large brokerages. We have a ton of small brokerages, and they all have different perspectives of how they're going to be operating. And realistically, I don't want to say they're all right, but I can tell you right, they're not all wrong, and there's not just one right way to do it. And so it's important to go into conversations with your competitors and the folks on the other side with an open mind of, you're both there for the same reasons. You're both there to broker a transaction to help a buyer and or a seller achieve their goals, and whatever their goals may be. And your logistics on how you get there are less important than helping them achieve their goals. And if people can keep that in mind, it's super important. But most important thing, while this rule change that was thrusted upon us from the National Association of Realtors and a settlement, the problem with a national rule is that it doesn't take into consideration local and state laws. And it's, we've got a number of people that listen to us from all over the country. And, if you're in California and I'm in North Carolina, while the rule is exactly the same, the real estate laws in your jurisdiction are completely different than mine. And so there's a lot of conflict, and there's a lot of marrying of how this is going to work out. And I hate to say this, but ultimately we're going to figure this out, but we're probably going to have to figure this out when things go awry and things go to court and they get adjudicated. So do the best you can. Try not to be the poster boy of a case that defines this, but ultimately that's where it's going to be defined because they've just left so much to ambiguity. And the biggest question, and we'll just come out and talk about it, is how we enter into conversations about compensation and how. And realistically, it's more in line of how a buyer's agent is going to confirm their compensation and how they're going to make sure that it's disclosed and noted how they're going to get paid. Again, in North Carolina, we can't get into those conversations on a contract. Whereas many other states, you just put it on a contract and it's clearly defined. You put it there and it's fine. Well, state law in North Carolina prohibits us from buyer and seller negotiating terms of a contract and it involving compensation. It has to be done outside of that, which in and of itself provides a little bit of clumsiness in how you get there, but we can get there, and that's just what we're trying to figure out right now.
Yeah, it's not part of the contract. It's separate, statutory. It's specifically said that way here in North Carolina, but it's part of the conversation now because that's the changes. That's the changes in the process. That's the I don't know if it was intended to be this way or unintended consequences, but it's part of the conversation when you're in a transaction now. So we got to figure out how to do that.
100%. I think that you have you've used this term before, the smart people in the room, those that are making the decisions, and I'm really becoming more clear to me that the smart people in the room really aren't that smart. they really have about zero idea of how things happen in the field. They have no idea what the ramifications of the decisions that they make. They just thrust upon these decisions because it's great in the moment. And let's just be honest, a lot of these people that are making these decisions, that are putting forth these settlement rules, that are negotiating on behalf of the industry, they're only there for a short period of time. And they're just, they're there for the skinny minute that they're in power, and then they're gone on to something else. And we're left, those long-term folks are left to pick up the pieces and figure it out. So I'm not looking to the smart people in the room to figure this out. I'm looking to my industry experts. I'm looking to my leaders in other brokerages. I'm looking to the brokers in the field to figure this out, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, you take it out of real estate, you can go into policy just about anywhere, and it seems like when policy is made, when processes are made, or when change is made, it's always made with the best intentions at hand, but without any thought whatsoever in any unintended consequences that may happen from it.
100%. But it's where we are.
Yep.
It's what we have to operate with. The big change that I think a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, is it going to be completely different? And I'm here. My interpretation is that when all the dust settles and we have figured out exactly what this looks like, I think ultimately we end up very similarly to where we started, in so far of how things are gonna go. I don't see a change in where a long-term change where majority of a buyer agent commission is paid directly by a buyer through cash in their hand. I still think that the logistics of a home seller participating in the compensation of a buyer agent will continue, because we've talked about this before. That's where the money is. A home buyer is putting forth all of the money into the deal. They're paying for everything. They're paying for the house. They're paying for the loan fees. They're paying for the inspections. They're paying for the appraisals. They're paying for everything. Every single thing in this transaction, 100% is coming from the buyer, and the seller has all of the money basically laid out in front of them. And ultimately, there's going to come there is a rub in how they're going to be able to get there. And representation is important. Representation is super important, and it will be protected, and it has been protected for so long that I still think that will end up being in the same place. I think it will still be paid for by the home seller in some way, form, or fashion. I think that what changes is how we enter into that conversation. And I think that that's what we're dealing with now, is how we talk about it, how we integrate with it. And it's not on the front end. It's maybe during the negotiations, and on the back end, it's how we get into those conversations.
Yeah, the debate has always been this portion of the sale was an expense piece, and the buyer's paying it. So it's the buyer's paying for the house, but a part of the expense goes towards the buyer's representation. Mm-hmm. So you could kind of, I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to figure out it's probably going to do the same thing, but they're going to figure out how to carve it out so it looks more, okay, this is what this is for.
Right. So. And I think the biggest piece of this, which I think it's a pro, is it's not a definitive normal number. There's no standard for it. It never has been a real standard. Yeah. In theory, in practice, there was a standard. There was a range that was the standard range.
Let's just be honest. It's because people hit the easy button.
They do. 100%, and I think that what this is going to do is going to allow the consumers and the buyer agent practitioners to be able to determine what their cost is, how they want to be paid, and what makes sense for them. And I think that ultimately is a good thing. And a lot of those that are out there that are listening to this are going to be like, I can't believe you said that.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get a whole
Oh
lot
my
of
gosh, why
yeah.
do you think that? No, I'm worth. But listen, you're worth what you can you effectively articulate, and you can effectively get someone to pay you, not what someone agreed to when you weren't even in the room. For so long, the buyer's agent's worth was dependent upon how good of a listing agent or the conversation that a listing agent had with their client. Had nothing to do with the value that particular buyer agent brought to the table. It had to do with somebody else's conversation, and that to me is a good thing that gets changed. And I think the consumers ultimately win in that. Not necessarily dollar for dollar win, but they win in making sure they're choosing the right person that's going to give them the value and what they want and what they want to pay for.
Yeah, this conversation specifically you got two conversations. You got one with the listing agent having it with the seller, but kind of what we're talking about is the buyer's agent having this conversation with their buyer and articulating their value and articulating just the compensation itself. This is going to make us better.
100%.
This is going to make us better. Being able to skillfully have that conversation is going to make you better.
Yeah, and here's the deal: you can either adapt and figure out how to work in the system, or you can get frustrated and get out. Those are really the only two options you have. And understand there are a line of people, young people, new people to the business that don't have all these "this is how we always did it" mentality, are going to come in here and are going to take over because they're going to figure out how to make it work. And if you're not willing to adapt, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
It's not going to work. So get creative. The biggest thing that I can urge everyone to do is, again, back to the statement that, don't go into it with an iron fist, that the way you have been talked to and discussed in a sales meeting or in a conversation or a coaching session, that this is the way it has to be, because the person on the other side was not part of that meeting, was not part of those conversations, and they don't know and don't have the same perspective as you. But understand that they were in a meeting, they were in a conversation with a different perspective. So go into this crossing paths with other people with an open mind that maybe, just maybe, my way is not the best way, and maybe they've got a good idea. And you get better, and then you adapt, and we figure it out. But these are the things that the brokers in our marketplace are facing right now. All of this is just how the sausage is made, kind of things. The consumer doesn't see it. They don't care about this. Ultimately, we're still helping buyers and sellers navigate a very complex transaction. We are still doing good work, and we're going to figure out the inner workings of the behind the scenes stuff. That's all going to get worked out. Grace is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Grace is the biggest thing. One of the things also that wanted to kind of hit on today is just we're in a shifting market, bud.
Yep.
And getting out of the minutia of the how we do, let's just talk about the market environment as a whole right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've now started to see interest rates decline, mortgage rates decline. You've got the Fed ready to make some moves, which should help that even more. So I think, we're in this time of, buyers may be getting ready to make some jump into the market, basically.
Sure.
We're going to have to see some stuff, get back into the market from the standpoint of sellers. We've got builders out there building, but we're going to need to have sellers actually selling their properties and doing that whole kind of domino effect like we've seen in the industry for so long, in order before inventory really gets back to where it is. But we're in a good spot. And what we keep telling our agents here is, right now is your time, because it's the beginning of the new uptrend, let's call it. And right now is your time to be positioning yourself in this business, in this industry. And it's a great time, because if you're working your lead generation and you're out there doing your stuff, you're going to position yourself really well. If you're sitting back and you're like, oh, this is great, it's getting ready to, take off again, and I'm being reactive to it, you're not going to go anywhere. You may still be productive and do well, but you're not going to have that change in market for yourself. You're not going to have your market share go up.
100%. I think the biggest thing, I want to hit on something. Sellers are going to have to enter into the market. You mentioned that. Sellers are entering in the market. I think inventory, in our local market is starting to creep up. I think it's by necessity. I think there were a lot of sellers that sat on the sidelines for longer than they needed to, and necessity has forced a lot of people to enter the market.
Life happens.
Life has happened, right. and they've put their properties on the market, and yet the actual rate environment has not gotten to a point where the buyers have re-entered. So you're starting to see an increase in inventory, and you're seeing properties sit on the market for a little bit longer, and that's an important thing for those that have been in our world for 8 or 9 years that have never experienced a listing having to sit on the market for a period of time. We're having different conversations. That's important to, again, adapt, figure things out. It's not always as easy as putting a sign in front of a yard and selling a house. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of work. Sometimes you have to get in and figure out what's going on. Is it a pricing thing? Is it a condition thing? Is it how it's positioned in the market? Those are all conversations that a lot of people have never had to have because it's the market was different. Rate coming down is going to put pressure on that. I really do think that. So I think that some of these things that we're dealing with right now, and so far as time on market, I think that's probably looking outward. There's maybe some downward pressure on that to decrease that a little bit, but I don't think it will get back into the to where it was in 21. I don't think it's going to be fire, but I think it's going to, the buyers are going to come out as soon as we can get, if an interest rate gets in that 5.5%, I think you're going to see a lot of people say, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe this is my opportunity. I've been waiting for it, and now I got to go take advantage of it. And I think you're going to see a lot of people come out and enter the market.
I totally agree. Right now is the time to shine as an agent. And you hit on one thing, and I just want to reiterate this because this kind of encompasses everything we've talked about today. Some of the best things you can do as a real estate agent is hone your communication skills. We talked about it with communicating, through navigating through these conversations of compensation with a transaction. But also, again, and I've watched agents, and we've been in the business long enough to know, there are tough conversations you have to have with your clients. Yeah. But for so long, it wasn't that hard. Everything was set. You weren't reducing a lot of prices, and now you are. And now the agents have to get back to, again, honing in this skill, not being scared to have this conversation.
I'm going to agree and disagree with you for a second. Okay. I think for a while, the agents in general were having tough conversations with their clients, just not listing clients. Right. So we've got a skill set that we've got. For agents went in and were having tough conversations with their buyer clients saying, listen, this is a market that you've got to, if you really want to buy a house, you've got to get serious with. Well, now we're kind of on the reverse where the sellers need to have that tough conversation of, if you really want to sell your house, these are the things. We're not in that market that you were in before. Yeah. Okay. Your house that is disheveled and you haven't done any maintenance and you're wanting to sell it for above what anything is ever sold for, is not right now. It's not going to happen. Right. So it's just honing in and developing the skill sets and the words that you're going to be able to articulate to your clients, and I think that the market has forced us to have to learn that. Yeah. I posted this previously, and I think this is one of the biggest things that agents are learning, unfortunately the hard way, is pricing your home is probably the most important thing in today's market, because if you overprice your home right now, it's going to sit, and you're going to lose way more than if you would have priced it appropriately, which we've always known that. You've been in the business long enough. You price it appropriately, you're going to make more money than if you overprice it, because if it sits, the consumer is going to be like, well, what's wrong with it?
Yep.
And it's going to go past that norm, that appropriate price is going to break through that and get to a lower point. So pricing is super important in today's market. There's just a lot going on. There's a lot to look forward to. We've talked about the inverse relationship to the what the market typically holds, and it looks like it's going to come into fruition for this year. Typically, 60% of the homes are sold in the first half of the year, where I think that's really going to probably be a reverse, especially if the rates continue as they're projected to. I think that there's still, 50-60% of the deals that can left to be done in 2024, which is a great opportunity, which means now is not the time to sit back and wait. Now is the time to get on the horn, have conversation with your clients. Right now is a good time for people to buy. If you have someone who's even thinking about it, right now is a perfect time to buy, because if rates creep down and demand goes through the roof, guess what? They're in a real weird situation where they want to buy, but they're competing with a lot more people, which could increase the cost of what they could have gotten if they just went ahead and made a decision a little bit earlier.
And that situation does not put downward pressure on prices either.
100%.
So if you wait, or you have to, if you don't get in the game early enough, you're going to be paying more for something you could have paid less for earlier.
100%. Well, it's a lot going on in our world. The market is moving. The market's shaking. We're figuring things out as professionals on how we're going to operate. It's important to know that those that are in our business and in our industry, you're doing good work. Our work is important. Our work is needed by the consumers. We provide a service that cannot be duplicated by an algorithm, cannot be duplicated by an app. As much as many people out there will probably troll this and say, oh yeah, it can, ultimately there's too much complicated decision making that an app just can't figure out, and I don't see it happening. So keep it up, do what you're doing, give yourself grace, give your competitors grace, give your leaders grace, and make it a fantastic rest of 2024.
Yep.
Guys, y'all take care.